Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
Stop them. An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army.
Welcome to Eradicating Programmed Ignorance, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project and broadcast on TLBTV. Today we have a very, very special guest, but before we get to that, y'all know I always do a bit of an intro. I want to talk today about activists and activism, all right? I would tell you from what most of you have seen from what I've written and the other shows I've done, that I firmly believe that the best activists we have are those who have been harmed, those who have been hurt, or those who have been seriously pissed off, or those who have been cheated, okay? And how do I know this, all right? You all know how I feel about vaccines. You all know the massive amount of research I've done on vaccines and the harm they cause. And everything I state, I prove. And I never challenge anybody to prove me wrong. I dare people to prove me wrong. And in the last 7 years, that's happened one time. So obviously I do my research before I talk. So why do I say this about activists? If you take a look at who has the highest level of activism, say, in the anti-vaccine group, you will find out it is the parents of vaccine-damaged children. If I scream bloody murder about the activists in the GMO issue and the glyphosate issue, who are the biggest activists? Those who have been damaged by the poisons, the toxins, the biotoxins. If I scream bloody murder about, and I'm talking about my rants, about the pharmaceutical industry, okay, and the well over 100,000 people each year who die from absolutely legal prescription drugs prescribed by doctors, okay, licensed doctors, you will find out that the biggest activists against this are the parents or the wife or the husband or the sister or the brother of somebody who has been damaged by these prescription drugs. So the trend I'm going towards here is when we think of activism, there are those who look at something and say, I don't like that. And they rev up their activism engine. And then they jump into line. But the people in the front of the line are the people who have been harmed by these mechanisms, or the people who have woken up to it because they have been exposed to it in a very large fashion. I spent 30 years working within a government with a security clearance that was absolutely stellar. And today, what do I rant about most, Rebecca? I rant about a government that has stepped well beyond its means, well beyond its abilities, and well outside of the Constitution. So here we go, all right? This is why my activism is what it is, because I spent a big chunk of my life there. Today, our guest is no different. What he is going to present and what you are going to present when you bring him in, Rebecca, is the fact that he has been exposed to these harms. He has seen what these harms have done, and it has instilled a fire in him that has stoked, I would say, is one of the best activists I've talked to in a very long time. So with all that in mind, and with the precept that activism, your really front-running activists are those who have been harmed by what they are activists against, I turn it over to you, Rebecca. Let's tell everybody who our guest is today, in case they haven't already guessed, because most people looking at him might have already guessed.
That is very true. Our guest today is an American actor, a writer, an educator, a male model. He is very well known from his advertising days in the 80s as the Winston Man. So with us today is David Goerlitz. Welcome to the show, David.
Well, it's so good to be here. How are you folks tonight?
We're doing really well, and I'm excited because not only are you just amazing at all of the things that you've done, very well-rounded, but you are entrenched in a whole history of what was sort of being covered and you are now uncovering.
Right.
And I think that this is going to be a very refreshing show for the audience because many don't remember the days of when smoking was okay on airplanes and in restaurants and so on and so forth, and where there was no one being really told what could happen to them and so on and so forth. And
Right.
You have a story to share and you have solutions to share. And this is what we're all about.
Well, you've opened up a can of worms with me because I'm not a soundbite. I'm just like Roger. I'm pretty passionate. I've studied this since I was 37 years old. I am the former Winston man. I was paid lots of money to entice, encourage, lure, trick, and target little kids to become replacement smokers for those people who would quit or die every day from a smoking-caused illness. So, you got to go back to the early 60s and 70s. I'm 67 years old. I'll be 68 in a few months. I started smoking at 13. No one put a gun to my head. No one made me start smoking. No one twisted my arm. I just happened to be one of 60% back in the 60s who was smoking, quite a bit. We were smoking on the bus going to school. We were smoking in the laboratories. We had teachers who smoked. We had doctors who smoked. I remember I had a doctor who was smoked cigarettes right when I went in for a checkup. So we're going back quite a ways.
Hold on one second, because I'm going to add one more thing to that.
Sure.
Extremely good little run you've just made, okay? I can remember when I was very young, and you might remember this as well. This is when women were first stepping out. When women were first saying, you know what, I need to be as equal as you guys. This is my freedom, and we're stepping forward. And women didn't smoke in public. And one of their first senses of freedom, one of their first displays of being equal was women smoking in public. And it was
Exactly.
and you saw ads going up in magazines all over the place, and these women were smoking, and it was cool. Look at her. Look how
It's glamorous.
smoking.
Right.
Yes, very glamorous.
It was one of those things that if you go back to the 60s, in 1964, our Surgeon General then was named Luther Terry. And in 1964, he went before the Senate and the House and the Congress and said, smoking kills. And it took the government until 2009 to come up with a Tobacco Control Act, 45 years later, to do a damn thing about it. Now, certainly we had, issues with the American Cancer Society, American Lung, American Heart, all these people who were intentionally probably in the right place 40 years ago, thinking that they wanted to help people who were dying from something caused by smoking. But the government did absolutely nothing. I was hired in 1980 to be the Winston man. I beat out 900 other guys because I happened to have looked what they wanted me to look like to entice and encourage young boys. My job was to get boys to smoke. Just like you said, Roger, women were hired to make smoking look glamorous and sophisticated, fun-loving, free-spirited, sexy, slimming. And if you ever talk to a woman in the 70s and 80s and ask them why they smoked, they said, well, they didn't want to get fat. And so smoking became a calorically challenging issue for them to where they would eat less, smoke more. So they knew what they were doing as early as the 60s and 70s. I happened to be a part of that in the 80s.
Well, I want to take this, and again, we don't have to jump off onto these side paths right away, but this is what I'd like to talk about today, okay? Not only your involvement in the smoking campaigns, but the day you woke up and realized that I need to do something about this, and the activism and the road of activism you took from there. But I want to include something else, okay? Something else that you're passionate about, because we are also very passionate about this. We do a lot of health-related reporting in the Liberty Beacon Project on multiple websites across the planet. I also want to talk about cannabis, and I want to talk about the absolute health benefits of cannabis, and I'm not talking about smoking it, even though smoking cannabis is far less dangerous to your body than smoking tobacco is. But I'm talking about vaping it, I'm talking about eating it, I'm talking about CBD oils, I'm talking about it checking cancer, so on and so forth. I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about one more thing. Because you and I have had several private conversations, and you brought this up in each and every one of them. I think you wanted to make it a point to me that this was part of your repertoire. And that is, you see the government today for what it actually is, not what it was when you and I were children. Not what it was when every single person, when the Star-Spangled Banner was played, stood up with their hand on their heart, looked at the flag, and was proud to be here, okay? Not a country where the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, Congress, and most of the federal court systems are corrupt and politicized against a duly elected president. Elected by who? By you and I, we the people. Okay? So
you're right.
there are 3 topics, and if we don't get them all in on this show, we will get them all in on a second show. I want to talk about your activism, which was initiated via the tobacco industry. I want to talk about where you started to and why you believe in cannabis, which we are huge proponents of. And I want to talk about what woke you up to a government that no longer has our interest in mind.
It's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to get all this in the next 45 minutes, but hopefully we can probably do a 30-hour show on what I have gone through. And I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give you a thumbnail sketch until people get to know me and want to follow me and exactly hear my story. It was 1988 when I quit smoking, number one. It was the hardest thing I ever did. I quit and failed and quit and cheated. And I did it because my brother was diagnosed with cancer. And you don't come home, from doing a Winston shoot and see your brother dying, in a hospital of cancer. So cancer was becoming synonymous with smoking as early as 60s, 70s, and 80s. That's when the government got involved. And intentionally, they said, we're going to try to, get the tobacco companies to stop marketing and targeting kids. And I came forth and said, well, that was my job. My job was to entice kids. I even testified in Congress in 1989 right after I quit smoking. And I told them that the tobacco executives told me the right to smoke was reserved for the young, the poor, the black, and the stupid. And that's been a part of congressional record since July of 1989. From that point on, gang, I was the golden boy for the anti-tobacco movement. And I'm not going to get into that tonight because that's a 2-week conversation. But I'll tell you what, within a very short time, becoming the golden boy for the anti-tobacco people, which included American Cancer, American Lung, American Heart, CDC, American Medical Association, the Campaign for Tobacco Free, all the people who initially got into their campaign to try to help people quit smoking and help people who were already diagnosed with cancer or emphysema or heart disease or whatever disease would go along with that particular genetic predisposition and or exacerbated by the smoking. That's when things started to unravel for me in around 1998, 99, when I started seeing the anti-tobacco people becoming as corrupt, if not more corrupt, than big pharmaceuticals and big tobacco. Why? Because they were getting billions and billions of dollars from not only the tax revenue, but also from all these other groups that were now going after the tobacco companies with a master settlement agreement of $246 billion in 1998. 246 billion, not million, came into the coffers of every state. And the first 4 states were Minnesota, Florida, Texas, and Mississippi. Those 4 states got a total of $46 billion. And the rest of the country said, well, we want some of that money as well. So they settled for $200 billion more on top of the $46 billion. So you see, as early as 1998, greed started to outweigh fear. Okay, when greed came in and took over all of these states' attorney generals who signed up for this money, that's when the crap hit the fan. And that's when you started seeing the corruption now becoming more and more transparent, especially by me, because I had worked for all of these people. I worked for big tobacco, I worked for cancer, lung, heart in this campaign for tobacco-free kids. So the long story short of this is that I learned very quickly around 1998, 99, that I was going to be thrown under the bus because they started to tell me to not say this about that, not talk about all the 434,000 people who would die every year from smoking at a rate of 1,200 a day. They asked me to back off on the fact that tobacco companies were targeting and marketing 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds because everybody knew, guys, that a 26-year-old person who's never smoked is probably not the demographic they're going to go after. They needed the 14 to 17-year-old, which is why 93% of smokers start under the age of 17. So I knew very early on that I was going to get screwed royally if I didn't walk away and do something different to see what alternatives there would be that I could get involved in. And it took me about 4 or 5 years until I started seeing the vaping community start waking up, coming up with the vape pens and the e-cigarettes and all the things that we could use as an alternative for people who were desperately trying to quit, because everybody, and I'm sure you and your audience has somebody in their family who has either died or was diagnosed with something caused by tobacco. So I'm going back 30 years now, and it's hard to get all that out in about 35, 40 minutes in discussion with you guys. But I'm telling you, I promise you, you're going to hear it all over the next several months.
You're not only not going to be even encouraged to get all of that out today, but what I am going to say, and Rebecca can expound on this because she is the media director for the TLB Project, you are going to be doing a TLB TV show. So you will have a show each week, and a progressive education will unfold from this. So today, it's just, let's hit on the topics, okay?
Okay.
What you've done so far has really encapsulated a lot of what happened to you, why you made the decisions you made. Okay. Again, I want to touch on 2 other subjects today. I want to touch on when did it dawn on you that cannabis is not just something that dopers roll up and smoke just to get high. That it is, in fact, probably the most medicinally accredited plant on the surface of this planet. There is no plant on this planet that can do more for the health of humanity. And if we go to hemp, I mean, we could take that across the entire spectrum, including industry. So when did that happen? I see what happened, because I can't believe that when you were pro tobacco and you were doing Mr. Winston commercials and magazine covers and things, that you were even remotely aware of the how good cannabis was as far as treating things like cancer, so on and so forth. But you did say that your brother was dying for cancer. I imagine you did a little research on cancer because you wanted to understand, was this the dawn of cannabis in your mind?
Yeah, somewhere around 2003. This was after my brother died, after I quit smoking. I started seeing a lot of people, because the opiate crisis wasn't even in full bloom yet, but we knew people who were on the prescription, Percocets and the Oxycontins and the oxycodones and the Extampsas and all the other stuff that was helping them. It happened to me in 2009, to be honest with you, when I got hit by a tractor trailer. I've had 4 cervical spine surgeries. I had a shoulder replacement. I had rotator cuff repair on the right shoulder, left shoulder. I have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia and herniated disc. And with that, I had to get 3 cervical spine surgeries. The 4th one came in later, and a shoulder replacement. And they put me on all of this garbage, that got me addicted to oxycodone. It got me addicted to all the other painkillers, muscle relaxers, the Flexerals. They gave me the trigger injection. I was a poster boy for needles and injections and facet injections. And finally, I just couldn't do it anymore. I decided that nothing was really helping anyway. I saw my brother, who had not had the opportunity to learn about marijuana or medical marijuana, because we didn't have it way back then, a long time ago. But I was going to be damn sure that I was not going to be a statistic and be one of those, prescription medicine junkies that wasn't going to be able to take control of his life anymore. So with the vaping thing, that came back into my life because I knew I wanted to help people quit smoking. I needed some help in getting off the prescription drugs. I mean, I was sick and tired of all the gabapentins and the Duexuses, and I was having, excuse me, 7 or 8 different, medicines coming in. I'd have to go back every 28 days. So I started seeing it somewhere around 2009, 2010. And a friend of mine is a pretty good sized pothead. I've known him for years and years. I didn't have that opportunity because I was traveling a lot. I was driving a lot. And plus I didn't need it for myself because I was already hooked on these prescription drugs. I started seeing my friends come off of opiates. I saw them coming off of the other things when they started to do a lot more marijuana because they were able to vape it in a vape device. They weren't necessarily smoking because it was the combustion that was really hurting people with tobacco. So I just correlated it to the same thing. Anything burning can't be that terrific for your lungs. But if you can find a way to do it sublingually, if you can do it in food, if you can do it in brownies, if you can do it in coffee, if you can do it in any other way, shape, or form, I was all for that research. So I started diving into it. I started reading everything I possibly could because I had gone through all these surgeries, so I had a lot of downtime. I was getting pretty savvy on the computer for Googling things. And I started seeing all these people talking about CBD and cannabis, and it was very foreign to me because I certainly hadn't been a part of that because I was hooked on prescription drugs. So basically, to get to this point that we want to talk about is that I am a total firm believer in not only the CBD, but also medical marijuana. And it's damn shame that people have to move to a state where they can get medical marijuana for their children or for their spouse or for their father or for their mother. I'm sick of it. And I got to find, go ahead.
It's not so much that anymore. As a matter of fact, a part of the Liberty Beacon Project, and you will be a part of this, even if it's just the information that you put out. One of our partners and one of the projects that we are involved in is called CannaSense. Mm-hmm. This delivers medical cannabis, and we don't so much use the word marijuana anymore because it has a negative stigma.
Sure.
Medical cannabis to anybody who has a doctor's prescription anywhere in the country today. And this is one of the projects that we are involved in. And as you roll forward, I'm absolutely positive that you're going to be not only introduced to this, but you're going to become a very vital part of this project going forward. So I really love the way you explained this. I really do. Let's touch on one more thing, and we can go back to opening the floor up to you and Rebecca for anything she may want to ask you. And any more information you'd like to put out in this premiere show where we're introducing you to the project and we're letting everybody know that you're going to have a weekly show whereby they can get all kinds of phenomenal information. And that's the third part of the triad I wanted to discuss today. Yep. All right. You have spoken about the pharmaceutical industry, which in my eyes is the most powerful lobby mechanism on the planet. The pharmaceutical industry spends 500% more or 5 times more than any other industry or any other commercial entity in lobbying our leaders. It is the most powerful lobby there is. The pharmaceutical industries almost, not quite, but almost control this country. So now we're talking about that. Now we're talking about a government that has basically made it extremely hard for life-saving cannabis. How many people wouldn't die from cancer? Again, let's go to what do you use what does the government use and what do our doctors say you need to have as soon as you find out you've got cancer? Chemotherapy.
Chemotherapy, yeah.
Chemotherapy has a 93% failure rate, and it does more damage to the body than it helps. But as soon as the doctor says you've got cancer, you're worth anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 to Big Pharma. Okay, so now we've got that aspect. Now we've got 2 aspects, okay? And what's the third one? The third one is if you keep us stupid, Common Core, and we don't know what our rights are, Common Core, and we teach our children everything but what they need to know to enjoy the rights that this republic bequeathed on them, then they become Common Core. So now we have a government that is absolutely hell-bent on dumbing us down and putting us in a situation where we serve them. Look, Dave, you and I both know, and I know Rebecca knows, it ain't supposed to be that way. So why don't you explain to us, when did you decide this government ain't what it's supposed to be anymore?
Well, I've known it for a long time, but I had my epiphany when in the last 6-7 years, when there was an alternative to combustible tobacco, which was vaping. The government tried to reban it. They tried to remove it. They tried to say we don't have enough knowledge of the long-term effects. Well, hell, we know the long-term effects of smoking, and it causes you death. So, I mean, what the hell's wrong with, an alternative? Would you rather jump from a 2nd-story burning building or a 50th-story burning building? So no one's saying it's 100% safe, but it certainly is a hell of a lot safer than what we saw 434,000 people die. So that's when it really hit me that the government really sucked big time. And when they were trying to take away alternatives and options for all of these people who are desperately trying to quit. And then I took it even one step further. I started seeing where CBD was also one of the benefits that these smokers, who probably are not healthy in many other areas of their life, with stress and, cardiac disease, they usually probably aren't running, 3 miles a week if they've been a smoker. So I found ways to get these people to understand that CBD should be considered, for their improvement, for complete wellness. So that, on top of my learning, my research, my education, there was no downside to this, none whatsoever. No, vaping is not smoking, number one. CBD can be a part of your protocol to help enhance the quality of your life so you can take it back. And then on top of that, I started researching and seeing all these wonderful testimonies of people who are now using medical marijuana for Parkinson's disease, for glaucoma, for epilepsy in their children, for stomach distress, for as anti-inflammatories.
PTSD.
Yeah. PTSD. So you cannot convince me that the government doesn't have a say in this. And you know what Ronald Reagan said? The 9 worst words in the English language are, "We're with the government and we're here to help." You know what? They can go pound sand.
Hold on, okay? Because I'm going to go all the way back, and Rebecca knows where I'm going. I'm going to go all the way back to Thomas Jefferson, who had the best crystal ball in the history of this planet. And I'm going to paraphrase this because it's not word for word. When the people, okay, decide to let the government make the decisions on the foods they eat and the medicines they take, their bodies will soon be in as bad a shape as the souls of those who live under tyranny. He said this in 1796. This is exactly where we're sitting today. Thomas Jefferson is my main man. He really is.
Well, I didn't know him very well, but I have read a little bit about him. But I've stayed more in the 20th century because that's all I know. You're very wise. You're very research-oriented. So am I now, because I wanted to see what this was all about, that I could take to my grave the knowledge that I spent the rest of my years, trying to pay back for what I did unintentionally back in the 80s in enticing and luring people to become addicted to tobacco, where it prematurely diseased them or made them die. So I want to go forward with whatever steps I need to take to get 41 million remaining Americans who still smoke cigarettes to find ways to use other alternative medicines to get off of combustible tobacco. If they want to vape, fine. If they don't want to vape, fine, but find something that's going to replace the garbage that they've been putting into their bodies. Garbage in, garbage out. So it's time to call it what it is. We are going to stop the government, or at least attempt to stop the government, by rising up. It's my duty. It's my job. It's my civil opportunity to make sure that these people are heard. No more free passes to these senators and congresspeople and lawmakers who don't give a crap about the human nature, the human condition. And that's where I want to come in with my story, with my legacy and who I am. That's what I want to share with you. So I can't put an exact date of when I started doing this, but it's been a while, and I'm fuming and I'm boiling. So I better get my sneakers on, because I'm going to have to run fast to keep up with you folks. And I'm going to do it, even at 68 years of age.
No, you're not going to have to run fast. As a matter of fact, I would say you're keeping up with us very well right now.
Okay.
Now, Rebecca, I want to bring you in here, okay, because you're sitting there sucking all this up. But I opened this up with a comment, okay? I said the biggest anti-vax activists are those who have lost a child or seen a child triggered into autism. The biggest, and I went on and on, that the biggest activists we have in any field or any endeavor are those who have been harmed or who have seen loved ones harmed. After listening to what Dave just said, would you say I hit it pretty well, Rebecca?
Oh, most definitely. And you're accurate in also saying that anytime that there's some type of activism or someone takes on any type of sort of honed in on issue, it's usually a direct result of something that they have personally been involved with.
Right.
And so you'll see people, they'll have a passion in some particular arena, and they may not be speaking out, such as David or you or I, when we have specific issues, but they will have a passion and they will spend their rest of their life committed to educating other people about the results from that and how to change it or what they've discovered.
But who's the loudest? Who's the loudest and the most forward? Who's the loudest and most forward? The strongest voice. These are the people who have seen the harm or who have felt the harm.
Here's what I find absolutely fascinating about you, David, is that you are taking not only ownership of your role in what happened with the tobacco industry way back when, but you're also taking somewhat of a responsibility and a personal responsibility to take to change it and to make it so that we move forward. And
Absolutely.
that is
I have to.
we don't see that. That's the thing. We just don't see a lot of people doing that. You'll have, think about how many people that actually worked for one of the large tobacco companies and knew it and then chose to look the other way after they are no longer working for the company anymore. And you see this in a number of different fields, not just tobacco, but in pharmaceuticals and so on and so forth. So this is where I find what you're doing not only just absolutely amazing, but it's breathtaking in a good way, let me tell you.
Well, let me just stop you there. One thing that I did do is I'm not one of these people that comes out 30 years later and starts exposing what I knew 30 years ago. I gave up a very lucrative position right during the middle, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I didn't have the heart to look at my kids anymore and say, I'm going to continue advertising to get kids to start smoking when my brother's dying of cancer and so many other people. I couldn't sleep at night. I couldn't do something if I didn't speak out. And from the time I started speaking out, the whole weight of the world lifted off my shoulders, because there's nothing wrong with the good dose of anger therapy if it's addressed to the people who are causing it. And that's where I come in. I'm going to address the people who are causing this stuff, and we're going to make it cease.
This says a lot about, it really speaks volumes about your character and your principalities, because there are many people who will stifle those for the almighty buck.
They try.
Yes, and you're not one of them.
Well,
I'm not one of those.
I've got to tell you, Dave, that we have a lot of really good hosts on TLB TV, okay? It's not necessarily, I don't have to be somebody who absolutely loves what they do, because this is what they have a passion for, okay? I'm not so interested in listening to somebody interview a different author each week who writes children's books or writes, and there's nothing wrong with that, because people want to know about these things. I'm not so interested about a woman who does a show each week about cooking, literally showing you cooking a healthy breakfast. Okay, does that interest me? Do I want to eat a healthy breakfast? Yes. Do I want to watch a show like that? I probably don't, but there are a lot of people out there who do. Your show, I'm going to watch every single week and hang on every single word, because your triad is just melds with mine so well in so many of the things you say and do. And you're right, okay? I take the politics and the political research much deeper. I take the tyranny and the tyranny research globally much deeper. But there are things that you do that are going to complement what I know.
Sure.
Because you know things I don't, but you're every bit as I'm listening to you. You're every bit as passionate as I am. I see your eyeballs opening wide enough to fit saucer plates in there. I see your face turning a little bit red, and I see your head lunging towards the camera as your anger builds. And believe me, this is my type of activism. So I love everybody who does a show in this project, but you come closer to walking the walk and talking the talk that I do, and I absolutely love it. Now, if you want to know a really good activist who puts on a great face and a smile, but gets a huge point across, she's sitting right next to you. Yeah. That's Rebecca. Rebecca is a retired police officer and a Marine vet. And I got to tell you something. She don't look like she's pissed off ever when she does a show. But I would hate like hell to be the guy who does piss her off.
Right, right. Well, I've had conversations with both of you, and I see this as being a great, great connector for what I'm trying to do. You folks don't have to have as much passion as I do, and I can't know what you know. But if you be you and I'll be me, and you let me be who I want to be, and as I told you on the phone, I told you on the phone a couple of days ago that the one gift I have at 68 years of age is that I am above the opinions that other people have of me, because what I speak is true. What I speak has been researched and corroborated. I won't go off the deep end and start, making up statistics that can't be found. But we have got to stop doing education in the form of sound bites. We have to let educated people hear the process of why people like me and you and Rebecca have the passion that we do. And you brought it up in the very beginning. I go out and do a lot of advocacy, and I hate that word advocacy. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I know. Because advocacy stands, as it's defined, going out and helping people who can't help themselves. Everybody I go to try to talk to can help themselves if they get off their butts and they start speaking their mind, listening to people like you, and then you educate them with little. It's like a bowl of spaghetti. You throw it at them. If it sticks to them, they needed it. The rest of it, they can push off to the side. Because I am not going to let people get away without being educated in a humorous way, in a loving way, in a replicatable way. That's the problem with people today who speak on shows. They're not replicatable. They can't remember the same things that they said last week. And then they go off into these tirades. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
so
I can tell you, go ahead. I not only agree with you, but the point is, and Rebecca will tell you this, a lot of my shows, I have to bring the same point up over and over and over again. And it's just a reminder because it's not the whole show. But one thing I say every single show, and you've already heard me say it here, and you touched on this, okay? I'm not going to go off. I'm not going to try and entertain people. And I'm not going to start stating things to hype people that can't be proven. One of the things, and Rebecca knows what's coming. Look at the smile. One of the things I say on every single show is, I will never challenge you to prove me wrong. I dare you to prove me wrong. Because I'm going to fire some people up in that audience to try and prove me wrong just so that they can get one over on me. You know what? We both win, because they're going to find out not only was I not wrong, but once they prove what I said, their knowledge level just went,
Right, right. Yep. You're right. So that's what I want to do with you folks. I want to be able to be a part of what you do. I want to be a triangle. I want to be, even with your other guest hosts that you have on other shows, there's a lot of education that can be done because we're such a distracted world. We're more interested in the Kardashians, and we're more interested in Russia. We're more interested in this, and every day I'm seeing 1,200 people die. My daughter's a mortician. And every day she comes home and tells me that another 23-year-old died of prescription drugs and overdosed on heroin. And I can't stand it anymore to see these young, vital people who got hooked on medicines by a doctor when they first started out, with Oxycontin, and then they needed to replace it because they couldn't get it anymore because they were looked down on by the doctors who are now finally starting to be held accountable for what they've done in the last several years. Those are the people I want to hold accountable. No more free passes, no more stay out of jail free cards. We're going to go after them. We're going to name names. And that's what I'm going to do with the people in the tobacco industry and the people who are trying to ban CBD and the people who are trying to stop a young person or an older person who can find the benefits of what cannabis can do for them. And we're going to make it happen for them. And that's why it's such a thrill for me to be able to walk through the door that you've opened up for me. And I'm not going to let you folks down.
Oh, not only am I absolutely positive of that, but I'm eager to watch your shows. All right, look, we're at the point where we need to start wrapping this up. Rebecca, your final thoughts, then we'll go to you for about a minute, Dave, and then I will give the parting shot. So, Rebecca, are you as thrilled about this as I am?
Well, I'm excited because not only do you have someone that has been there and done it, has done the research and really is just enmeshed in getting the education out there. And this is crucial. This is what I say all the time on both of the shows that I do. Education is everything. You cannot make healthy choices. You cannot make just really concrete good decisions unless you have the knowledge and the truth behind those things. And having that really changes everything. Every single decision that you make for yourself, for your family, for your community, once you become knowledgeable about the things that are going on, it's a whole different ballgame at that point. And again, I'm just absolutely impressed because there's ownership here, there's responsibility, even taking responsibility on that isn't yours, and a lot of people will not do that. And then getting others educated. I'm just overall impressed, and I think it's going to not only be your show an asset to the network, but I think it's going to be an asset and a life changer to those who need it most.
I am so looking forward to it. I am really looking forward to this, folks.
Dave, give us a real quick wrap up here, please.
Yeah, I spent a lot of years with the anti-tobacco people in the education. I've seen over 5 million kids in middle and high schools. I know I can entertain them. I can also educate them. And I've met more young people who would come up to me and said, thank you so much. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I can reach people because of my experiences and the fact that I am passionate like you. And I'm not going to force feed them. They're going to learn, like you said, they're going to read, they're going to research it. And then I'm going to challenge them to prove me wrong, just like you said. And they're not going to be able to. They may have a different opinion, but they can not challenge me to prove me wrong, because all I have inside of me is the gift to get people to live longer, enhance the quality of their lives, proportionate to the havoc that's being wreaked on their lives by not only our government, our big tobacco and big pharmaceuticals, but a public perception that is false and wrong, and we're going to change that.
Wow. All right. Look, we talked about a triad here. We talked about the intrusiveness of a government. We've talked about the failure in the education of our children, Common Core. We've talked about big pharmaceutical. We've talked about the actual life-saving properties of medical cannabis. And we've talked about the absolute decimation of so many lives over the last, I don't know, century when it comes to tobacco. But everybody listening, Dave hasn't even cracked the cap yet. This is a show you all need to watch, and I promise you, you will not be disappointed. But we do have to wrap this up, and I know that, Dave. So for everybody watching, this has been another episode of Eradicating Programmed Ignorance, which we try so hard to do, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project and broadcast on TLB TV. Y'all have a great night.
You too. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.